Even Minsk may be more tolerable. Larian truly put their effort into ensuring she's the most hated. Even my wife cannot stand her. Instant dislike, just as I expected. Genocidal, prideful, egotistical, fantastical creature seeking beef with everyone. That level of arrogance is mind-blowing. I kill her or ignore her every time. Githyanki in general are probably the most evil race apart from Illithids. These ugly, half-ghoul-looking alien creatures deserve to be hammered on the spot. In a contest of ugliness, only half-orcs and halfling manlets win. Lae'zel is the most unlikable character ever created in any video game. Larian Forums user, November 2023. You might remember when Baldur's Gate 3 came out of early access. There were some common first impressions. Gale is a creep, Astarion can bite me anytime, and Lae'zel? Yeah, Lae'zel sucks. A lot of players encountering Lae'zel for the first time really hated her, and it's not hard to see why. She's rude, she's opinionated, she orders you around, she doesn't really make any effort to ingratiate herself with you, she doesn't say thank you, she often disapproves of your kindness towards strangers, and she's an unabashed Githyanki supremacist. So it wasn't unusual to hear people saying in their playthroughs they just left her behind, if not actively hastened her demise to loot her sweet half-plate. Meanwhile, Karlach was, and still is, really popular. She's basically a golden retriever in the form of a tiefling muscle mommy. She's friendly and open, the sort of person you could have a beer with. She's loyal to her friends, she's strong but not threatening about it, and she's grateful for all you do for her. She approves of you doing good things, and she affectionately calls you
Soldier. Soldier. Hey, soldier.
But you've seen the title of this video. The thing about Lae'zel is that, first off, she's more of an outlier not for being unusually horrible, but for being uniquely chill by the standards of the awful fascist cult that raised her. Although Lae'zel is tough and independent, she's the youngest of the Origin companions, a 22-year-old with almost no broader life experience. She spent her entire childhood in
space!
On one isolated asteroid, Kresh Kalir, which is only 500 feet across in its longest axis. It only contains about 20 rooms total. That whole time, she's not just been taught, but drilled with a very distorted and particular image of how the world works. According to Party Banter in the Mind Flayer colony beneath Moonrise, she'd never even seen a Mind Flayer before she was brought aboard the Nautiloid for the game's opening cinematic. She's visited one other asteroid in the Tears of Saloon, called Eye in the Sky, where she fought a Beholderkin, and she's participated in a raid on a Neogi Spelljammer ship. So she's no stranger to battle, but imagine someone who grew up in a Jonestown-like cult compound who's only ever left it twice to go into a brawl in a biker's bar down the road with fellow cultists. As much as she bristles at everyone's ignorance of space marine lore, Lae'zel is herself a deeply, deeply sheltered person. Her only experience of the universe is that it's a brutal place where showing even momentary weakness gets you hurt, so she acts like an evil jerk. When Lae'zel interacts with you in Act 1, she's interacting with you in the only way she knows how, regurgitating the only truths she's ever known. And yet, she goes above and beyond to save your life, and the lives of your companions, anyway. She doesn't attack you on sight, as many Githyanki would, and instead takes a chance on you. She's entirely honest with you. She basically hides nothing, and is even happy to lead you to a hidden Githyanki creche in order to provide you with free medical care. She'll even stand there and watch as you vandalize a portrait of her beloved leader and generally make a nuisance of yourself. She'll disapprove, but it's only minor disapproval, and if the creche turns on you, she'll take your side rather than theirs. You fought the Mind Flayers together, so now she's ride or die for you. And then, over the course of the game, she goes through a lot of character development. Maybe the most out of any companion, and in a character development-focused game like BG3, that's really saying something. Ironically, given how hard the two failed to hit it off at the Nautiloid, Lae'zel's arc very much mirrors that of Shadowheart. Shadowheart is the victim of a religious cult, just as Lae'zel is the victim of a political cult. Lae'zel learns things that shake her faith in her supreme leader-turned-goddess Blackith, just as Shadowheart learns things that shake her faith in Shar. And this is a through line across all the Origin companions, struggling to escape the shadow of a malevolently paternalistic supernatural figure who wielded brutal, coercive control over all of them. Shar, Blackith, Mizora, Mystra, Cazador, Azariel, all of which is set against the background of the main plot, which involves a religious cult taking over the world. Yes, this is a consistent theme. Heck, for optional companions, Minthara, her backstory, and the main plot involve one and the same cult. Baldur's Gate 3 is a game about faith and abuse. And all of this character development is a big part of why a lot of the distaste for Lae'zel dried up after the game came out of early access. She can be a bit obnoxious at the start of the game, but if your character is going to develop, you need to start out at a point that is different from where you end up. A flawed character has a lot more runway in that regard. By the end of the game, Lae'zel can become a legendary hero of her people, having committed to her life to freeing them from the yoke of fascist tyranny and building a better world. That's about as heroic as it gets. So that's Lae'zel. But this video isn't really about Lae'zel. We've got to talk about... Now, don't get me wrong, clickbait video title aside, Karlach is by and large an intensely kind, good-hearted, and moral person. And she's been through a rough time, which by the standards of the Baldur's Gate 3 companions really is saying a lot. She spent the last decade in literal hells, specifically Avernus, the first layer of the 9 hells, where she was a test subject for experimental surgery and then a mercenary slave in the Blood War. And you've got to imagine she's been witness to the worst, most messed up stuff you could imagine. So it wouldn't be surprising if she were a little rough around the edges. But by and large, she's not. And if anything, this discrepancy is the real mystery. Karlach is one of the companions who will up and leave your party if you side with the goblins in their assault on the Emerald Grove. Keeping her makes evil playthroughs hard, and as the Baldur's Gate 3 wiki says, Karlach has a very strong, well-developed, and intuitive sense of right and wrong, not unlike that of a paladin. She enjoys helping innocents with their troubles, not expecting anything in return. Something she finds in common with Will after their rocky first meeting. She approves of kind interactions with those in need, standing up for what's right and being decisive with enemies. But there's also a significant stain on Karlach's moral ledger, even if it's a bit of a conditional one involving a fair amount of what the philosophers Williams and Nagel termed moral luck. In short, if a person drives dangerously and fatally runs over a child, is that morally equivalent to the identical situation in which the child happened not to step out into the road in that moment? The driver may have been fully aware of the possible hazards of dangerous driving, but the presence of a victim was never actually under their control. If we consider the actual manslaughter to be somehow worse than the unfulfilled possibility of manslaughter, then we're condemning people for, in essence, simply being unlucky, and must accept that misfortune is somehow a sin in and of itself. It's an interesting thing to think about in D&D context, because D&D's objective cosmic morality puts a big emphasis on evil acts. It's very deontological. So what about the situation where a character would happily perform horrific acts of evil, but simply never gets the chance to? Is their soul unstained by the grace of Tamora, or dragged to the lower planes by the weight of unrealized sin? Bear that in mind. Because in Karlach's case, we're talking about soul coins, and the fact that given even half a chance, she will torture and devour mortal souls in order to empower herself with their suffering. There are 19 soul coins to be found in Baldur's Gate 3. Karlach can eat every last one of them. Or none of them, depending on how morally lucky she is. If you're playing as Karlach, the first time you find a soul coin out in the world, you get a fascinating special interaction.
Holy shit. A soul coin. Wonder if they work, even up here. Or is it?
Karlach is clearly conflicted between her desire for power and her moral discomfort over using a soul coin, which literally entails destroying a mortal soul. And if you as the player are in the driver's seat, you decide how she resolves that dilemma, though her internal monologue will express a yearning for those sweet, sweet coins either way. But if you're not playing as Karlach, if Karlach is just in your party, you get a different interaction. Canon Karlach is just fine with eating that soul coin. If you make the case that perhaps souls aren't ours to consume, though she herself may have had that same thought, she's palpably defensive and disappointed.
So, hey, we've got this soul coin, right? Thing is, I think I can use it. My engine can, anyway. Zariel used to top me up every now and again when she wanted me to go after an especially wicked target. They're already lost. Better to be used in service of the good guys than a devil, don't you think? Next time we're in a nasty battle, drop one my way. You'll enjoy the results. You're the boss, I guess.
This isn't just regular disapproval, which shifts the character's opinions by 1 point. No, if you refuse to give Karlach a soul coin, or even express doubt that consuming soul coins is an okay thing to be doing, that's a hefty -5 for her approval to you. She finds it hard to trust someone who isn't completely down with her devouring souls. To put that into context, -5 is what you get for getting Arabella the Tiefling child killed in the inner sanctum of the Emerald Grove and reacting positively. Tell Aradin that you hate the Tieflings, those filthy devil spawn. Side with Nier in the Underdark, or otherwise decide to murder the enslaved gnomes yourself. Purchase Oscar, the artist, from the Zentarim and make him your slave. Buddy up with Raphael. Ask Mizora if she wants you to kill Karlach now. Those are all equivalent in terms of approval to refusing Karlach a soul coin. But by way of contrast, cutting off Gale's hand, leaving Mayrina in Ethel's clutches so the hag can eat her baby, attacking Elika unprovoked, torturing Liam, refusing to help Arabella, and leaving the Tiefling prisoners to die in Moonrise, those are all just -1 approval. Those are less subjectively bad in terms of earning Karlach's trust. Which is to say that Karlach, unless you're playing as her, feels very strongly about soul coins, and that feeling is, delicious. Similarly, there's a unique interaction if you bring Karlach to the conversation with Indira the Tiefling in the Emerald Grove and save her from the bugbear. As soon as Karlach gets wind that she has a soul coin, she becomes almost breathless with excitement and is super stoked if you manage to persuade or intimidate Nadira to give it up. So what's a soul coin? It's sort of what it says on the tin, a metal disc with a mortal soul sealed inside it by infernal magic. They seem to have first turned up in the D&D canon with the 5th edition adventure Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, published in 2019. Soul coins are about 5 inches across and about an inch thick, minted from infernal iron. Each coin weighs 1/3 of a pound and is inscribed with infernal writing and a spell that magically binds a single soul to the coin. Because each soul coin has a unique soul trap within it, each has a story. A creature might have been imprisoned as a result of defaulting on a deal, while another might be the victim of a night hag's curse. These coins are minted in the Nine Hells specifically. Soul coins are created by Mammon and his greater devils on Mineros, the 3rd layer of the Nine Hells, in a vast chamber where captured souls of evil mortals are bound into the coins. And while the quote seems to imply that it's only evil mortals whose souls are bound into the coins, it's also readily apparent from other parts of the text that you don't have to be evil to end up in a coin. Your soul just has to come into the possession of a devil. There are many ways for that to happen. A victim of a night hag's curse is just as likely to be a good person. And people make deals with devils for many reasons, but generally because they're desperate. Either way, a soul coin basically represents a person with hopes and dreams and the capacity to suffer. But as Karlach says, these souls are already lost, right? Nah, it's not even that difficult to free them. Remove curse pops them right out. Casting a spell that removes a curse on a soul coin frees the trapped soul within it, as does expending all of the coin's charges. The coin itself rusts from within and is destroyed once the soul is released. A freed soul travels to the realm of the god it served or the outer plane it most closely tied to its alignment, DM's choice. The souls of lawful evil creatures released from soul coins typically emerge from the river Styx as Lemure devils. Your party should have at least someone capable of casting Remove Curse before you even reach Act 2. Gale and Shadowheart can both cast it once they reach 5th level, and Halsin, who's kind of an upstanding nature dude you'd think would be all about returning souls back into the natural cycle, can cast Greater Restoration at 9th level, which also works to remove a curse. Freeing a soul from a soul coin is considered a good act, even if the soul belongs to an evil creature. But freeing the imprisoned souls you find in Baldur's Gate 3 is never an option, whether or not you have Remove Curse available. Presumably, the party just never becomes aware that the souls within the coins aren't actually beyond their help. And sure, they have bigger fish to fry, and a ticking clock to consider, but it's strange that they never even consider the possibility. An entire mortal life resides within each one. I suppose you can roleplay privately that your character is hanging on to them in order to research a way to free them after the adventure is over. When Karlach uses one of the coins, she gains the condition Infernal Fury until her next long rest. The hatred and pain of a captured soul fuels Karlach's infernal machine. Her weapons and unarmed damage deal an additional 1d4 fire damage when she's raging, or when her hit points drop below 25%. Hatred and pain? The souls Karlach devours are clearly having a bad time. Descent into Avernus describes what this entails. An infernal war machine's furnace consumes the soul coin instantly, expending all the coin's remaining charges at once and destroying the coin in the process. The soul trapped in the coin becomes trapped in the furnace instead, powering the infernal war machine for a duration determined by how many charges the soul coin had when it was consumed. 1 charge equals 24 hours, 2 charges 48, 3 charges 72. If it's still trapped in the furnace when the duration ends, the soul is destroyed. Not even divine intervention can restore a soul destroyed in this manner. Regardless of its size, a furnace can hold any number of souls, their screams of anguish audible out at a range of 60 feet. So the souls that Karlach consumes are eventually destroyed, but only after the better part of an entire day or two of unimaginable metaphysical suffering trapped in a literal furnace. Can you imagine how different the choices to use soul coins would be if that screaming was audible in-game? Karlach's engine must be metaphysically soundproofed. How convenient. But it gets worse. Way worse. Enter Lantarv. He's the bugbear merchant you meet in Moonrise Towers, and he bears a message for Karlach from an old acquaintance of Karlach's named Flo.
Florenta the Garotta. A Cambion I knew back in Avernus. She was the closest thing I had to a friend. That said, she would have choked the life out of me if I ever turned my back on her. The fact that she knows where I am, where I might be going, doesn't exactly delight me. Maybe. Probably. I don't know. She's a half-devil. Impossible to read. I wouldn't have given her the time of day, but even I needed a laugh once in a while. What can I say? The bitch had good jokes.
Flo has given Lan a trio of soul coins and told him that if he gave them to Karlach, she'd consider it a favor. But there's a catch.
For every coin you take, you've got to hear the story of the soul trapped inside.
There you have it. Flo came all this way just to try to make me feel like shit. Clever use of her time. Memorized a bunch of sad stories on her behalf, did you?
At this point, you can accept the deal and hear the stories, or you can refuse. Karlach strongly disapproves if you walk away. It's another -5 with her. And morally speaking, they really are much better off in your hands, just so long as you don't give them to Karlach afterwards. Who are these trapped souls? Their names are Mavery, Frakes, and Ongir, and each of them are deeply sympathetic, innocent victims of circumstance whose souls were snatched by devils through unfair dealing and trickery.
First coin's got the soul of a woman named Mavery. She was born to a cruel mother, and a violent father, and 3 evil brothers, all named Balder. She never knew a day of love in all her life. When she was a girl of 15, she sold her soul to Tiamat in exchange for someone who would love her unconditionally. She got what she asked for. A fellow named Clint, destined to be her soulmate, struck by a cart and died a few moments after clapping eyes on our Mavery. Poor guy. The scud of her soul is yours now.
So yeah, this poor lonely girl does not deserve to burn screaming in a furnace for hours while her soul is torturously rendered down into ultimate oblivion. I hope we can agree on that. She might not even belong in hell, metaphysically speaking. She might have been bitter about her lot in life. She may have embraced villainy, or she may have been a sweet, gentle person otherwise bound for eternal succor, but it ultimately didn't matter. She ended up trapped in a coin because she made a deal with the devil as a child. Can a 15-year-old consent to being damned forever? The divine cosmology of Dungeons & Dragons says yes, apparently. Maybe she then lived for some years after making her ill-fated deal, or maybe this coin literally contains the imprisoned soul of a teenager who was tricked by a predatory god into making a dangerous mistake out of a desperate yearning for one tiny crumb of hope in her piteous existence. Mavery is someone who, in any other situation, a true hero would save, but Karlach will happily cook and devour her soul instead while she cries for mercy. Next coin.
This one has got the soul of a man named Frakes. Lived in a village near Neverwinter. Hit hard by the worst hunger in 1,000 years. Frakes called out for help. Prayed for his children to have meat to eat. Zariel answered. Made old Frakes grow flesh upon flesh after flesh. His wee ones had all the meat they could stomach.
Frakes isn't just a victim. He's kind of a hero. A great dad might lay down his life for the sake of his children, but Frakes didn't just lay down his life. He also damned himself to an afterlife of ceaseless torment just so that his children might survive. That's selfless love on a whole nother level. Chances are he maybe didn't know what he was getting into or what it would truly cost him. He might not have known or cared that it was a devil who answered his prayers rather than a more kindly deity. He might have cursed his ultimate fate. His children might have been scarred for life by their experience. They might not have themselves chosen to live at the expense of their father's soul. Ultimately, this was probably a bad choice, but he tried to come through for them in the most tragic possible way. Were Frakes' soul released from the coin? Well, if it's the thought that counts, you've got to imagine he's racked up one hell of a moral credit score. But Karlach will instead throw him into a furnace of horrors for an extra 1d4 fire damage. Next coin.
Last one's got the soul of a little boy named Ongir. 8 years old. He liked playing in the sun with his friends. That's all I know.
Yeah, so that last one's just a child. And lest we forget, Mavery might also have been a child. Before anyone comments that the Pact Primeval should prevent the cosmic injustice of a devil getting their hands on the soul of one, there's clear precedent here. In the 5th edition adventure, Waterdeep Dragon Heist, an Archdevil can collect the souls of a pair of innocent 9-year-old twins as a result of their deal their parents made, which implies parents in the Forgotten Realms, no matter how malignant, metaphysically own the souls of their children. Thanks, I hate it. But think about this for a moment. Karlach will happily devour the soul of an 8-year-old child while he screams in hellish torment for hours, specifically in order to feast on his suffering, to marginally increase her power to do violence, which is such a heinously, obscenely monstrous act, it far worse outweighs anything that Lae'zel has ever done. And it entirely outweighs the fact that she's kind of nice to you and calls you
soldier.
The only reason that soul coins don't seem like a big deal is that it's happening off screen. We don't see Ongir, Mavery, or Frakes. We don't meet them. We don't see them hurting. We don't hear them screaming. But imagine if you got to Act 3 and found Karlach eating Yenna. And when you confront her about this, she grins, blood dribbling down her chin, and says that innocent children were a delicacy in the infernal court of Zariel, and she's kind of developed a taste for them. What's the big deal? It makes her feel good. Yenna's probably doomed anyway, given the chaos unfolding in the city. Better Karlach eats her than Orin. She needs the finest cuts of Yenna meat, so she can get big and strong to defeat the Absolute. Most players would probably feel this tremendously out of character, because it would be. Karlach is consistently characterized as being particularly protective of children, but if you think about it, what she actually does is worse. Karlach eating Yenna wouldn't destroy her soul, and would be much less prolonged than putting her in an infernal furnace for hours. And so you gotta wonder, if Karlach knew the souls of the coins could be saved, would that just absolutely break her? Or would she rationalize it away? If she knew she was choosing this nightmarish evil, it wasn't just a case of, oh well, sucks that they're damned, but now we can have them suffer for a good cause. If she knew she was eating a child when she could have otherwise saved them and ushered them to the afterlife of comfort. Because she's not doing this out of sadism, or active indifference, or a philosophical love of evil for its own sake. She uses soul coins because it feels good. It's convenient, it benefits her, and she doesn't think too hard about it. In fact, even though she seems proud of the effects of the soul coin, she does find thinking about the souls within them unpleasant. Her frenemy here, Flo the Garroter, is literally using this hypocrisy as an opening to hurt her. Because yeah, Flo sucks.
Well, thanks, Flo. Hearing a bunch of desperate horror has ruined my day, which I suppose was the point.
Now, does this make Karlach any less of a nice person? Does it make her principles any less noble? Does it mean she was faking it the whole time? No, it means that people can do horrific evil without necessarily being cruel or having ill intentions, which is rather true to life. After all, most people watching this video probably carry around a semi-magical object made from special arcane metals, whose extraction from the earth often involves the brutal exploitation and suffering of children. And this is the great insight of the Archdevil Mammon, whose ideal the soul coins were in the first place. You don't need a grand scheme to entice a noble hero onto the path of corruption. You just need to offer them convenience. You don't need to trick them, you just need to put all the gory details behind a curtain, or far away, or inside a soundproof box so the screams don't spoil brunch. Sure, a succubus can tempt an individual mortal into terrible things with the promised act of lust, but Mammon commands the Nine Hells' ultimate weapon of corruption.
Capitalism!
So what are we to make of this? The big take-home lesson here is that alignment as a framework sucks. Which, given the D&D's universe is literally revolving around alignment, means that D&D's cosmology is necessarily baleful and unjust. Imagine a noble knight who tirelessly crusades against evil, defends the weak and selflessly serves his kingdom, saves the world on a weekly basis, constantly accomplishes feats of incredible heroism, and who goes home at the end of the day and viciously beats their partner and children. Is this person good or evil? Are they necessarily neutral? When they die, will they ascend to Mount Celestia or fall into the Nine Hells? What if they're merely neglectful as opposed to physically violent? Is there a certain ratio of being abusive partner to a heroic deed where the math works out and the latter outweighs the former on a great scale of the objective cosmic morality? Cosmically, in D&D, the answer seems to be yes. When you compress alignment into one or more singular axes, there is necessarily a certain number of babies you can eat per heroic deed done that leaves your cosmic ledger in the clear. In fact, in earlier editions, certain classes were alignment locked, and you could absolutely get into a situation where you were at risk of becoming too good for a neutral class and had to metaphorically kick puppies to compensate. Framed like this, isn't it kind of obvious that good and bad deeds don't really cancel out or stack? And alignment as a framework, especially in relation to how D&D's Afterlife works, is woefully deficient in its lack of accounting for moral luck. Lae'zel was unlucky enough to be born in a society that was bad, so she ends up lawful evil by virtue of happenstance, even if her inherent tendency is to be more heroic than your average person. The judgment isn't made relative to your background, it's made relative to some objective cosmic yardstick. Lae'zel would have ended up in the Nine Hells. And a lot of times when players talk about this sort of topic, the argument gets made that, well, the souls and the coins are emerging from the banks of the river Styx in Avernus are evil, right? So they must deserve it. So it's morally uncomplicated. And, like, what does deserve even mean? Does Lae'zel deserve eternal damnation for being born in a cult? Does Shadowheart? And does Karlach for being kind of a nice person, yet also regularly devouring mortal souls, including those of the gentle and innocent? Ursula K. Le Guin said it best. For each of us deserve everything, every luxury that was ever piled in the tombs of dead kings, and we each of us deserve nothing, not a mouthful of bread in hunger. Have we not eaten while another starved? Will you punish us for that? Will you reward us for the virtue of starving while others ate? No man earns punishment, no man earns reward. Free your mind of the idea of deserving, the idea of earning, and you'll begin to be able to think.